Hello and welcome to the show. Well, the fourth week over 60% clearance, as Kevin Brogan will tell us in just a moment, and the Sydney clearance is in fact the best in over 2 years. So what's happening to the market? Kevin Brogan from CoreLogic back in just a moment. He'll tell us.
Point your clients in the right direction with our range of directional signage. With a variety of options, we have a pointer board for every situation. Made with quality, durable materials, they're built to withstand our varying weather.
And we welcome back into the show once again Kevin Brogan. G'day Kevin, how you doing?
Very good, thanks Kevin.
Yeah, some good encouraging results, aren't there? I said there that the Sydney clearance is in fact the best in over 2 years. Let's bring up the clearance rates and you can walk us through those. 71.3% out of Sydney, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that clearance rate's the highest since June 2017. Obviously, the volume of auctions is sort of modest with winter and the school holidays, but nonetheless, that's a really confident result.
Even Sydney at 67.2%, that's not too shabby at all. It's down a little bit, I think, on last week, is it? Or am I wrong there?
Yeah, that's right. Melbourne's results have been fairly consistent in the sort of mid to high 60%. The last couple of weeks before this one, we saw Melbourne just a shade below 70%. This one's edged down a little bit, but again, when you compare it, as you said, to what's happened in this week a year ago, really a much stronger market, much stronger results.
About the same out of Brisbane. Nothing. We're not seeing anything spectacular out of there. Still around that 30 to 40% range.
Yeah, look, that is at the upper end of the range that we've seen in Brisbane for 2019. So look, it is about what you might call normal, I suppose, for Brisbane this year.
Adelaide 60.7%. That's a pretty good result. That Adelaide market is really quite strong, I think.
Yeah, look, the Adelaide market is an interesting one. That result at just over 60%. That's the strongest result we've seen since October. But it's really interesting. The Adelaide market has been fairly resilient to some of the changes that we've seen in the eastern state capital cities. So we haven't really seen those price declines and we haven't seen those big fluctuations in clearance rates. I guess the flip side that we're looking for in Adelaide now is some of that confidence that's returning to the eastern state markets, Sydney and Melbourne. Is that confidence going to have a marked impact in Adelaide, or is it again going to be fairly muted?
We'll watch out for that. Let's bring up the Sydney sub-regions, and you've got to say City in the south, a standout there at 82.2% over 50 auctions.
Oh, look, absolutely. That is the highest, and the eastern suburbs is really not that far behind at 80.7%, and that's, again, looking at records, 80.7% for eastern suburbs, that's the highest we've seen since about August 2017. And that's in a sub-region which has been doing reasonably well throughout the sort of softer market conditions for Sydney as a whole.
Take you to Melbourne now, and some pretty good results there too. If you look at Inner East at 83%, but probably for me the standout would be Inner South at 75.5% off 59 auctions. So a good number of auctions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the Inner South, I think we've reported a few results as highest sales in that locality. Really some blue chip suburbs there, which are sort of coming into their own. Our figures are tending to suggest that although the weakness in the market was most evident in some of the higher value properties, so too is the strength returning to the market in those higher value properties.
Let's have a look at what the auctions are going to be like this coming week. We'll come back in just a moment. Kevin Brogan will give us the final numbers that CoreLogic are tracking. But in the meantime, here's James Bell with his auction tip for the week.
Hi, I'm James Bell from the Auction Group. It is quite common as a buyer that you find yourself as the only registered bidder on the day of an auction. Your first assumption as a buyer is that you are the only one interested in the group for that property. This, however, is not often the case. In fact, you may be one of many groups that have interest in the property, but you're the only one in the group who can act on the day and purchase under auction conditions. This does give you an advantage, but only in the sense of being able to negotiate with the sellers in an open forum before they start to consider other interests post the auction. As an auctioneer, I've seen too many times buyers miss their opportunity to negotiate with the sellers and try to come to an agreement. They become their own sales prevention officer. And it all hinges on the fact they feel as though that there is no one else. My advice for those buyers that find themselves in that situation, and for agents as well, is to have transparency and work with the agents to try and secure the property before you allow others in to compete. Thanks again. I'm James Bell from propertytv.io.
Thanks, James, and back with the show again, and Kevin Brogan from CoreLogic. Kevin, let's bring up the auctions for this week. Any surprises there?
Oh, look, I think the thing that's worth commenting on is we are seeing the impact of winter and the school holidays in most states having the predominant influence on auction numbers. We're below 300 in Sydney, so although it's a seasonal thing, it is a lot lower in terms of activity compared to last year. Also, Melbourne just a shade over 300 auctions. That's really quite low activity. So although it's seasonal, it is lower than a comparable week last year. We're seeing confidence in the bidding in the market, but maybe vendors are just waiting for some of these other effects to kick in, including the traditional spring selling season.
Yeah, I would have thought it would be occurring before now because we're seeing a lot of confidence in the market. Those clearance rates are up, interest rates are down. We've had the federal election. One wonders how much longer we have to wait, or whether we indeed have to wait through until now September, and when we see the spring market pick up again. Yeah,
look, I think in the capital cities, we are seeing new listings at a fairly low level. But in terms of the actual amount of stock on market, there's still quite a lot of residential property in both Sydney and Melbourne on the market. Maybe one of the things that also happened last week is APRA's announcement of the reduction in the buffer for serviceability. There's a possibility now that new purchasers will be able to enter the market demonstrating serviceability at around 6% instead of 7.25%, and it's going to extend borrowing power for those potential purchasers who've already got approval. But of course, the market takes a little while to react to some of these things, and people are obviously making an informed decision about when they list their property rather than just a knee-jerk reaction. So, yeah, we'll be watching this fairly closely over the weeks ahead.
Always good talking to you. Kevin Brogan will return on Monday from CoreLogic, and he will give us the interim results from the weekend. Kevin, thank you once again for your time and your wonderful insight. Have a great weekend, my friend, and I'll talk to you on Monday.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Kevin.